What's going on, everybody? Really excited for this conversation today. I'm going to be talking to a couple of longtime collectors, guys that you probably know, Mike Moynihan and Chris from Missouri. Now, they do their Showcase Showdown episodes, which I know a lot of us have watched. I wanted to start off by asking them a little bit about that, and then I wanted to get a little bit deeper into how they collect, why they collect that way, what they collect, what the future of their collections look like, and a little bit about grading, a little bit about just about everything that you can think of. A really interesting conversation about the hobby as a whole. I think that you're going to enjoy it. So here it is. All right, guys. So here we are with my two guests. And I don't think you guys really need introductions. We got Chris from Missouri up there. And then we got Mike Moynihan, a baseball collector. And, I was saying, Chris and I were talking the other day, and we're like, we haven't really done a collaboration in a while. We should do that. And we started talking about Showcase Showdown, and I was like, what? I don't really know how that whole thing unfolded. Like, how did that start? What's the behind the scenes on that? So I thought it might be fun to talk about that. And then I have a few other questions about some auxiliary things. So first, let's start with Chris. Chris, how did the Showcase Showdown whole thing originate? Whose idea was that? Was that your idea?
I want to tell everybody it was my idea because I really was thinking of something like that uh, of this idea. But I remember like it was just yesterday where I'm actually driving down the interstate thinking about calling Mike. Not with this idea, but there was something I had going on that I was going to call Mike, and then it comes across my truck that I'm getting a call from Mike Moynihan, and he so he pitches this idea, and it's exciting. And then we kind of, as he's telling me what his idea is, we kind of in 20 minutes kind of come up with the whole aspect of the show. Do you remember calling me,
Oh
Mike?
yeah.
And I said, "Oh man, I should have came up with this idea. I'm going to claim this as my own." And it was really Mike, and we kind of drafted the idea within 20 minutes, and really haven't deviated from the first idea.
We
Now,
did kick
Mike,
around some different ways to score it, and some, we thought, what's the best way? And then, man, what if people actually played along? And every once in a while we'll have guests, and they'll show, because Chris and I are not naive enough to think that we have the best collection of each of these players that we're doing. But there are other guys that are super collectors of certain players and love having them on, like Darren with Nolan Ryan. Or in fact, one of the first episodes we did was Carl Yastrzemski, and we had Mike Junkwax Hero on. And so just, it wasn't intended ever to be just me and Chris all the time. We wanted to incorporate the community and other people that have great collections of these certain players. Really, it comes down to, like, we did this week's episode on Monday night, so it was trying to do it weekly. It's like, well, sometimes we are doing it kind of last minute and getting a guest to participate last minute. He and I can do it. We can work with each other pretty easily and do it whenever. Not everybody's as just available, I guess.
And we haven't really followed through on all of the ideas yet that we had come up with. I liken it to, if you're a golfer, basically we're playing one against the other right now. But one of the ideas, we thought we could get a super collector maybe sometime that we haven't done yet. And maybe we do what we call in golf a scramble, us two against that super collector. We haven't done that yet, but there might be a time we do some stuff like that. But the way we're doing it, it can evolve.
Now, I want to take a step back, because I'm thinking to myself right now that there's a possibility that there are some people who may listen to my channel or have seen my channel and somehow doesn't know you guys and know Showcase Showdown. So let me back up for a quick second, and let me give a quick overview on how the game works and what you guys do. And then, Chris, you correct me on any of my mistakes. But basically, you find a player run of a Hall of Famer, which you use a wheel to determine who the next person is. And then you guys lay out all your cards for that player. And if you have the card itself of that player and for the full run, starting with the newest card going back to the rookie card, you get 5 points. And then you get a point for every number of the grades. So if it's a 6, you get 5 points for having it. You get 6 points for it being a 6 for a total of 11. And you guys basically go head to head. And then the rookie cards are worth double. And you go based off the PSA set registry runs for the players. Is that correct?
That is, you sound like you've been on Showcase Showdown doing my spot before.
Well, I've never been invited, so I haven't.
Well, I'm better at describing this game than Mike is, because if you would watch Showcase Showdown, the loser of the last Showcase Showdown has to describe it to everybody how we play. And I have practiced that many more times than Mike has.
Mike has definitely had a lot of success. Now, Mike, let me ask you this. When you came up with this idea, my guess is because you've got a lot of Hall of Fame cards and it's fun to talk about them and show them and pull them out, have a reason to look at them. I think I know the answer, but tell me, what made you think of Chris as being the guy to do this with?
Well, Chris and I are collecting kindred spirits. We collect very similarly. He obviously does some things that I don't do and vice versa, but the core of our collection centers around the same thing, which is collecting Hall of Famers, getting cool cards, top 300, greatest 300 cards by Mike Payne. There's a lot of symmetry in Chris's and I's collecting. Another guy that falls into that is Don. Field of Dreams is very similar to the way I collect. And Chris and I just get along really well. Neither one of us have a problem giving each other a little bit of grief every once in a while. And we knew we'd have fun doing it. And we knew we'd enjoy getting the cards out and just comparing collections. And I knew Chris had a pretty complete collection. And I didn't want it to be where either one of us had huge gaps, in a certain player or whatever. We wanted it to be, because we really want to show the card. At the end of the day, I just want to show all the cards, right?
Yeah.
Whether I have a grade better or Chris has a grade better than me is just the fun of it. But the truth is, most of the runs we've had a lot of cards, and there's runs that Chris admits to that, man, I hope it doesn't land on this guy till I got some more cards to get. And when it landed on George Brett, which is going to be next week's episode, I'm like, I got some gaps there, and so that's okay, but I'm going to have most of the card. I have all the cards. Are they graded and all of that. So we are, why Chris? It was an easy choice, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't even.
Yeah. And you guys obviously have a lot of fun together. You guys obviously both really like each other. And like you said, you both tease each other a lot, but you're both okay with it because you know that you care about each other. So you're similar in the fact that you both do player runs of Hall of Famers. Chris, how would you say that you and Mike collect differently? What's the difference in the way that you guys collect?
Oh, gosh. So, Mike doesn't brag about this very often, but his autograph collection is probably valued just as much or more than his regular baseball cards. Now, I have never been a big autograph collector. Now, I have plenty. I have plenty to suit me, but Mike's just we're just different by far in that. He'll stare at an autograph somewhere and decide he wants it. He'll get that autograph, where I'll just admire the autograph. But we differ on how we came about with our collection of cards, meaning Mike collects by decades and by years. He wants to have all the Hall of Famers, including the managers of every year, post-war cards. I think that's his goal. He's got this 4-decade he's trying to complete a 4-decade set and he's going to start a 5th decade soon. I never thought about that. I never thought about that. I find a player and I go after every card of that player. But when it's all said and done, we come to the same ending. He has the 55 kilobrew, the 56 kilobrew, the 57 kilobrew, because he's going after the Hall of Famers of that year.
No 57 kilobrew. None of us
That's
have
true.
a 57
That's true.
kilobrew.
That's true. But he has all, he got his kilobrews that way. I got my kilobrews by going after Harmon Killebrew. So we differ there. Another way we differ, and I wish I wouldn't have followed his lead on this, is he stores his cards by years. And I always, from the time I was 8 years old, stored them by player, meaning I took all my Hank Aaron cards and put them all together. I took all my Willie Mays cards and put them all together. Not Mike. He puts them by year, and we differ like that. But there's probably other differences I'm not getting to. But that's
pre-war stuff. There's some differences. Chris has gotten into the pre-war game, some T206 stuff and everything. I'm obviously getting into that. I've been propelled into that. It's always been a Pandora's box I was afraid to open, because I knew where that would lead me, and it's leading me there. It's like the vortex. It's like the tractor beam has me and I can't pull away from it. I don't have enough escape velocity to get away. And so I'm going down the proverbial rabbit hole with pre-war now. And, that may be something we do that, we're going to do some things by year, and just do the years of the Hall of Famers. Because there's some guys that just aren't, like, are we going to do Hoyt Wilhelm? I don't know, maybe, but that's, we'll talk about the future of the show later. But
and if people that are listening at home, when Mike said neither of us have a 57 Harmon Killebrew, that's because he doesn't have a 57 card, just for those that aren't aware of that. Now you're starting to go down that pre-war thing, and I know the recent collection that you bought helped kind of propel that, because it got you a little bit of a jump start on it. Let me ask you this, Mike. Between the two of you, who do you think enjoys the Showcase Showdown more, you or Chris?
That's hard to say. We both love it. Like, it's the thing I look forward to making sure I do every week. And content creation, as long as I've been doing it, I'm at 1,200 and something videos just on Baseball Collector. Never mind collaborating with other guys, the podcast, chasing cardboard, etc. It can get a little bit, man, there's no idea that we can come up with that somebody hasn't done. And truthfully, there's nothing anybody can come up with that hasn't been done in some way. Now, you can improve on it. You can, put your spin on it and make it unique. But at the same time, the base idea, just like movies, all movies are really the same thing, right? Just repeat stories and different takes on it. So to say I enjoy doing this with Chris is a massive understatement, because it gives me, like we say on the show, gives us a chance to take cards out we don't normally look at. Monty Irvin, for example, a couple of weeks ago, or, pick your esoteric Hall of Famer random guy. It's so much fun. We talk before and generally after for a while and just shoot the bull and catch up. And I talk to Chris, a lot, just off air and off camera.
Yeah.
We're just good friends, period. Yeah. And so, we know about each other's lives and things that are going on. So it's way more than just cards with Chris and me. So I enjoy that half hour we get to spend every week thoroughly.
And that's one of the things that I noticed, just as an observer who watches the show, is, I watch Chris do his videos. I watch you, Mike, do your videos. And then I see you do the Showcase Showdown, and you both look like you're just giddy, like you're just bubbly, more so than when you're not doing a Showcase Showdown video, that's fun to see that relationship, and that'll take place on there. Now, one of the other things that you guys didn't mention about how you guys collect is Mike is a 98% PSA guy, and Chris is a kind of whatever guy, right? Like Chris, you have slabs of a lot of different brands, correct?
I'm really kind of narrowing that down to PSA and SGC, and I'm actually slabbing my older GAI stuff, or anything like that. I'm getting them re-slabbed. I love a slab card, but and I know he likes his cards to be all uniform, and I get that. He is a little bit OCD on that, and I'm okay with the SGC and the PSA. But I'm going to step back, and if you would have asked me that question, who enjoys Showcase Showdown the most, I'm going to tell you he's far off. He's as far off on that as can be, because I truly enjoyed the opportunity to do Showcase Showdown with Mike, and I'm glad he offered me that chance. I love everything around it as well. I can't tell you how many of my friends, including you, Greg, text me and say, "Oh man, you almost had him," or "Oh, it came down to the last card." I went to a card show. And Billy Ballgame, who's a YouTuber, content creator as well, he witnessed this. I had a half a dozen different people come up to me at a card show saying, "Man, when are you going to win at Showcase Showdown?" Or, "I love that time that you beat Mike." And I love all that stuff around it too. And it's not the attention thing. I just like the fact that I get to do something once a week that I know other people are playing along with it, and then other people enjoy it, and they seem to care about it just as much as Mike and I do. So I wanted to go ahead and answer that, even though I had to go back and steal some airtime.
Well, I've got a question for you about GAI in a second, but first, one of my favorite stories is when we were all in Strongsville, and remember that guy walked up and he was talking about how much he liked Showcase Showdown. And he said, you were like, "Oh yeah, and you said, "Who do you root for?" And he says, "I root for Mike, actually." And Chris is like devastated. "Oh, you root for Mike? Why do you root for Mike?" And he says, "Because I like winners," is what he said. Remember that?
I remember that. Holy cow. Holy cow. I was all excited for him to say something. My chest was, I was cleaning myself off, sticking my chest out. And then he says, "I root for Mike." I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I thought that was so funny.
There's an interesting, let me say something,
Yeah.
Greg, I'm sorry. But,
no,
in terms of views that Showcase Showdown gets on my channel, it's relatively small.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care. And I mean that truthfully, because the people that do watch it, and it's hundreds and hundreds, it gets 800 to 1,000 views a week. Those are people that really want to watch the show.
Yeah.
And I've always said about making videos of any kind, I would tell anybody, you should care more about 4 quarters than 100 pennies. I'd rather have fewer dedicated viewers that really enjoy the content than some random person that doesn't really care and is just clicking on it because it was in their feed or something, and they're not really invested in the show in terms of enjoyment. And I think this series has provided a lot of entertainment for a lot of people, and I think that they enjoy seeing Chris and I banter back and forth. And my friend Garrett, obviously Chris knows Garrett, Card Cutter on YouTube. He just like, you guys just get along really well. I love watching you guys. He said, "I love when you guys give history of the player and talk about the player and don't just show the cards." Although it's a little bit of all of that, right? We try to talk about that player's career and what they meant to baseball. And we've had, I don't know how many comments. Monty Irvin was a great example. "Man, I got to go bolster. I don't have many Monty Irvin. I want to go get some more Monty Irvin cards.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really cool. Those are awesome. I need to get some more of those in my collection." And that makes it so worth it. If it's only a few hundred people or 1,000 people that love that, I'll do that, in perpetuity.
Yeah.
for that type of an audience. It's a dedicated audience to that show, to this show, and I
Yeah.
think I just really appreciate that.
Yeah, I definitely have some videos like that too that get fewer views than others, but the people who view them really, really like that, and that dedication to that particular thing, it makes it more fun to be a creator of it. You said something a second ago, and I still am going to come back to the GAI to you, but you said creates a lot of entertainment for the viewers. You know, as a teacher, I can tell you that the best type of teaching is when somebody is learning and they don't realize that they're actually learning. That's a good teacher. And to me, Showcase Showdown is actually one of the most educational things on YouTube about learning about vintage cards, because you're going through a series of years, looking at the differences of the years. You're looking at a variety of different slabs and the types of, the graders and what's happening there. You're going through the player, and this is the year he won the MVP, and this is the year he won a triple crown, and this is the year they made it to the World Series. And the amount of learning that I think that a viewer picks up from that is off the charts. And when you're picking those things up, but you don't realize, it's not like somebody sitting there with a lecture board writing on a blackboard, but they're learning a lot of stuff. And I think that's one of the best things about Showcase Showdown is how much other people are picking up along the way.
Agreed.
Now,
Totally
Chris,
agree.
back to GAI real quick.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
when you have you crossed those cards from GAI, or did you crack them and submit them to a different company?
I cracked them and submitted them to a different company, and that different company was mainly SGC. But I do have a story. I I bought a card off a stand at a national in Chicago, and then it was the Satchel Paige rookie card, not the Leaf, but the
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 Bowman.
Bowman. And I bought it, and it was a GAI 5, and I was glad to have it. But I knew he was going to be at Strongsville the first time that I went to Strongsville. So he had a Satchel Paige in a PSA 1, and I wanted to. I didn't have enough guts. I hadn't cracked any cards yet, especially from GAI ever, and I was afraid if I was going to crack that thing, it would come back. There'd be some kind of problem with it. At the time, I wasn't educated enough in slabs and that kind of stuff. So I negotiated with that GAI 5 Satchel Paige, and I got the PSA 1 along with some upgrades. Like I went from a Tom Seaver 3 to a Tom Seaver rookie 6, a couple other rookies, and I felt pretty good deal. And Stan did not hesitate, and he bought his card that he sold me back with that big trade, just a big trade. And he cracked it, and he sent it off, and it came back a PSA 5.
Mm.
So, I lost some money in that transaction, but I gained no risk. I mean, it was easy for me to
You
do.
transferred the risk to him.
I did, and he was happy to accept it. And so, um, actually, it's hard for me to think of one. I've only cracked a few, like 3 GAIs. One of them was a 69 mantle in white letters,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like in a 4, and it came back an SGC 4. So
Now, for people out there listening at home, you might go, GAI, who's that? But GAI is a defunct grader now, right? But their roots are from PSA, correct?
that's all. I have to hand that off to Mike. I don't know.
I
I
don't know
was
the
under
history of it. I mean, they've been around since the
yeah.
dinosaurs.
I thought that, and I might be mistaken, but my understanding was that one of the main graders, a couple of the people from PSA were the ones that went over and started GAI. At least that's what I thought. So,
Very possible.
yeah, I was curious as to if you crossed them, how did they do? Because one of the questions I get a lot personally is, hey, I kind of want my slabs to match, or I kind of want to go over to this one so that they're like my other ones. But what is the likelihood of them going up or down? And then I just read a message today that somebody sent where somebody had taken like 10 BVG cards and sent them into SGC, and they like every single one of them went down a grade to 2 grades. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So I was curious what your experience with GAI is. Now, another thing about this game that you guys do, Showcase Showdown, is you you do get points based on the grade. And I know a lot of us out here say, "Oh man, you buy the card, not the grade." And then we've got a game that's using the grade. And what's the how do you? I mean, how do you?
How do we
I know it makes
reconcile
the
that?
game easier. Yeah, how do you rectify that, Mike?
Um, well, you have to have some way to measure, right? And we had to determine a winner, and so it just made sense. Now we don't we talk all the time. I look at Chris's cards, and it might be, I might have a 5 and he has a 7, and I'm like, that's awesome. But he's not poo pooing my 5, and I'm not, and vice versa. It's not a question of we love the cards, period. And hopefully that comes across in the show that regardless of what grades we have, every collector would say, if I could, I'd buy the highest grade that no one's going to say I want a low grade card if they're really truthful with themselves. Like, I want one that looks like it's been run over by a truck. No, I'd want a Hank Aaron 10 that Nat Turner has, rookie. I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford it. So all collectors have to do that dance of what's the best value for my particular situation. And my higher grades on some cards are because I bought them a decade ago, not because I could buy them today. I have a 53 Satchel Paige and a 5. There's no way I would buy that card today in a 5. But I paid $320 for it 12 years ago. So that's, when you can see on the show, my slabs are old. The bit higher grade ones are typically older slabs and probably wouldn't get the same grade today if they were resubmitted. I don't, there was a comment not long ago that, oh, look at Mike's, they're all old slabs. Those aren't really, XYZ grade or whatever. They would be lower today. And I own the cards I own. What do I didn't assign the grades, PSA did or whoever. And so I don't think it's a question of the fact that longtime collectors can have higher grades. I'd love to get all the cards I'm choosing to buy lower grades now from a value standpoint and a maximizing my hobby dollar, not because I don't want higher grades. It's because I simply want to maximize my dollar. And so it's a reconciliation that each person has to do between budget and desire of cards. No one would say, and please comment below if you're just like, yes, I want the one. And I'd go, why wouldn't you want a nicer looking card if you could afford one and it made sense? There was a time pre-pandemic when you could buy all the Seavers you wanted in 8s, 9s, and 10s for $10 or $20. I remember going to a national and I got all these Nolan Ryans. One table had them and they were all 9s and they were $5 a piece. And so I just loaded up, on all these PSA 9 Nolan Ryans, and they're all $50 now, or whatever they are. So no, I wouldn't do that today, but I didn't have to do it today. I did it a long time ago. So things change.
Yeah.
And to buy the cards, I would tell any collector, buy the cards you want. There are some collectors that say, I want one big card. I'll hold. I won't buy all the other stuff, and I'm going to hold out for the super nice looking PSA 7 Satchel Paige rookie, or something like that. And then there's guys that say, I want a Satchel Paige and a Jackie and a this and a that and the other, and I'm that guy. And so I go, I can't have a 7 if I want all this other stuff too, because we all have budgets. Some are bigger than others, and it doesn't matter what your budget is. You can have a great time in this hobby. Just everybody's got to have that, come to Jesus talk with themselves of what their real goal is. My goal is to have all the cards.
Mhm.
Would I want them in the highest grade possible? Yes. I've been settling, not settling, that's not the right word. I've been making an active choice to go lower and lower as post pandemic and the continued thriving of the hobby that's still going on. And cards are just more expensive. And so, where I was getting 7s and 8s before, now I'm getting 5s and 6s,
Yeah.
in 70s cards, for example. And okay, that's what makes sense.
Now,
That's a
Chris, let me
long-winded answer. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
No, it's a great answer. It's an interesting answer, and I think I have a follow-up for you in a second. But as you were talking about, there's a card that I wanted a 7, but now I'm getting a 5. Now, Chris, you did something really interesting at the National this year, that I want people to hear that you did, which is you brought some cards and you basically traded down. You basically took some cards at, like, we'll just call it a 5, and you unloaded that card in a 5, went down to a like a 1.5 or a 2, and then picked up this other stuff as well. So from that perspective, what is your philosophy with grading? I mean, because that, I mean, to me, that's sort of the definition of not caring about the grade, and not caring about whether it's a pristine example, but you want the cards. Like, is that basically your philosophy?
It is, and I actually do that now when I go to any show. Um, I will take a couple bigger cards in search of the card, whatever the card is that I don't have. And so, for instance, I really, really want to pick up the Satchel Paige Leaf. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to find that at very many card shows that I go to. But there's about 3 card shows that I go to, I may find that card and or whatever the card might be. And so let's say I have a higher grade, fairly good sized card. Like I have a Mickey Mantle, 1953 Mickey Mantle in a 5. And I brought that card with me to the National. And if I would have gone to a table with a guy that deals in vintage and he would have had a card that I wanted to get that I didn't have, and maybe a fairly good looking Mickey Mantle in a 53 Mickey Mantle in a 2, I would have used that equity in that 5 to help me add to my money to go after that card I didn't have. And I did, I truly, you hear Mike and I say on that, on Showcase Showdown, the grade really matters none to me.
Hmm.
We say all the time, I'm just glad I have the card.
Hmm.
I'm glad I have the card. Now I don't want a terrible looking card, and I don't want to, but there sometimes you have to be creative to get the cards you want. If you don't have enough money to just go out and purchase the card, you got to get creative, and I don't necessarily want to just trade that Mickey Mantle, that the only 53 Mickey Mantle that I have, and put it with money toward the other card, because now I'll be upset that I don't have the 53 Mantle, and then that'll be a card that I want on my list. So I just creatively do that to get equity for the card for another purchase.
Another person who I know has done that for a while now is Orlando, where he's got some doubles of some really great cards, and he'll sell one of them, to have money at Strongsville, or to sell a few cards that he has doubles of some of his Goodwin Champions cards. He sold off the doubles because then at the National he had money, and it's sort of like refinancing your house in a way. It's like if you if you trade down a little bit, or you refi, the amount down a little bit, and pull out some equity to put in the pool. Now, I'm not a person who uses equity in his house. I like not having debt, so I'm a debt free guy. So I pay it off and then I leave it off. But that is a good way of using what you have to get more of what you want.
But that's
Now,
not that different. Hold on. I think Chris, when Chris does it, he's doing addition by subtraction, right?
Mhm.
He's he's adding more depth to his collection in terms of different cards trying to get and maintain the cards he has just in a lower grade. It's the same thing. That it's not that different philosophically. It's simply that I use just my paycheck. I just use my card budget to do that, not other cards. Like, I wouldn't take my Mano rookie. I don't want to take my Mano rookie. Not that I couldn't, and I have a PSA 5 and get a 3 and use that equity to buy other cards. I'll just wait and save that money up just to buy the next card. It's not different thinking, really. We're trying to add to our collections however we can make the numbers work, right? And Chris doesn't have to trade the Mano 5. He could have kept that, and it would have just taken him longer to get the next big card. Right. He's just finding a way to do it a little bit faster and maybe more efficiently than me having to wait for my next paycheck to be able to buy the 41 play ball DiMaggio, which I still don't have, that he does.
One of the things that's interesting about you two guys and why this game works so well for the two of you is both of you have the breadth and the depth of a collection far wider and deeper than a lot of people that in the hobby that I know. A lot of people have been actually doing the opposite, I think, recently. I've seen more and more of people selling smaller pieces to get a big piece instead of using a big piece to get several smaller pieces. And it's interesting, and I don't know what that phenomenon is all about. I kind of think that maybe some of that is a result of YouTube and people seeing these amazing cards that people are showing off at before they had never dreamed of owning, and they see some guy that they know and they go, he's got that card. That card's amazing. I want that card. I'd trade my whole collection for that card. And then people are starting to trade big chunks of their collection for that card. But that's kind of counter to what you're doing, Chris. What is it about having everything because you guys have everything? What is it about having everything that is more exciting to you than having just like 3 massive crown jewels?
Well, okay, my wife has this T-shirt. She's into fitness and she's into hiking, and she says her T-shirt says, "I haven't been to all the national parks, but it's on my list." Yeah. And so I don't have all the iconic cards, but they're on my list. I'm going after cards that I can get now, that when I was a kid looking at Beckett and looking at baseball card digests and, oh, I love that card, or looking, I still desire cards that I desired when I was a little kid. And now, God's given me the opportunity that I can go after that card. Now, I get how other people do that, and but I want to. Mike, you put this. You have a term that's better than this. I want something that you said. I want a quantity of quality, and I believe that's how you put it. And that's what I want. I have a direction that I want to go for, but I would hate not to have my 41 play ball or my 40 play ball cards just so I could get the 48 leaf, 49 leaf Satchel Paige. I don't want to sacrifice those cards. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind sacrificing the grade to be able to come up with that, but I don't want to give up my Ted Williams. I don't want to give up my Ty Cobbs just to own, a Babe
Joe
Ruth.
Jackson.
Yeah. I just don't want to do that.
There's something key to what you're saying, and maybe this will speak to the people that have come into the hobby or re-entered the hobby. I've been doing this 43 years. Chris has been doing it 50 something years. That's like between us, that's like 100 years of being in this hobby. you can accumulate a lot of stuff over that time. The breadth hasn't come from being filthy rich. It's come from time. And I think patience is such a virtue that's been lost in the hobby. People are just, I want it now, and I'm going to give up all this stuff or whatever. And they don't think of, they're not playing the long game. I'm the long game guy. Chris is the long game guy. And we're thinking, okay, I always think, well, I didn't get a 41 DiMaggio at the National. Okay, I got 20 years to do it. I'm not in a hurry. Will it be more expensive? Should I do it? Yes, all those things are probably true. But what my experience has taught me is patience is mostly a virtue. I don't think a lot about, man, I wish I would have. We all go back, oh, yeah, I would have bought every vintage card I could have. I would have emptied the bank account and all that stuff. Well, sure. But since the future is unknown, I'm just going to do what I can within the budget that I have and just, okay, I don't want to lose the itch to be on the hunt. That's fun too, right? Owning the cards is super fun. And I think that gets lost too, is having the cards. I had Tom, do you know Cooter Lev is his name on YouTube. He was over here a couple weeks ago at the house, and it's the biggest joy to just go, all right, what do you want to look at? And because of that breadth, Greg, whatever he said, I probably had something that he would just think was super fun. And I love, but I also collect, 1989 Burt Blylevens. Who else wants that? I do.
Right.
So there's plenty of stuff that people go, man, I can't believe you have that. And yet, okay, I have the Ty Cobbs and the whatever too, but I want all of it because it's the spectrum, it's the history, you have to have some focus, you have to have some rails that you stay within, which is why I avoided the deep dive into pre-war for so long. And I still have plenty of other cards. My list is very long, Greg, of cards I want, as is Chris's. I've got hundreds and hundreds of cards on my want list that I'm still going after, and it'll happen. And if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. I have a great collection already. And I think people need to have more patience with acquiring some of these things and just let it happen. Don't force it. Don't do something you might ultimately regret by getting rid of cards that you'll just go back and, man, I wish I would have kept that.
And for people that are watching this instead of just listening, I know a lot of people listen, but some people watch. I keep looking down, and the reason I'm looking down is because I'm old now, and I have to remember what my next question is and what I'm thinking. So I've got a page full of notes, but a couple of things. First, to me, the hardest question in the hobby for me is quality versus quantity. And I'm constantly going back and forth on what the right answer is, because I think, like you kind of said a second ago, I want a quantity of quality is what we all want. But there are times that we do have to use some of our equity to add something over here. But then, like I know, Chris, you had traded a Larry Doby card to John 3D 80s Kid, and immediately the card was on your want list. It's like as soon as it was gone, you're like, well, now I need one of those. But in the short term, you picked up this other card that you wanted to add. And so, I think that's something you guys probably do too, is go back and forth between quality versus quantity. Because I remember about 6 months ago, Mike, you did a video and you said, I've seen the light. It's okay to sell. And you had a whole bunch of like relic cards and auto cards. You had like this 4-row box, and you had a spreadsheet, and you put a bunch of stuff up for sale, and you sold. You go, I don't need all this volume, and you sold a bunch of stuff. But I still think of you as a guy who has breadth and depth. Is that something you still feel is that was the right thing to do? Have you still seen the light, or do you sometimes go back and go, I still want a bunch of this stuff? Uh-oh, he's reaching in a drawer.
Here's the box.
Okay, and you still got a bunch of it?
It's still 4 out of the 5 rows are still full.
Are they still for sale?
Technically, yes, but I'm also not willing to. This isn't like I have to get rid of them,
Yeah.
right? I'd originally done that because I was going to take all this stuff that I would. I used to go to shows, and man, if I saw any Hall of Famer for 10 or $15, I'm like, yes, I'll buy that card, autographed,
Right.
and because I just thought they're cool, they're fun, or whatever. And I had, I don't know, 57 Brooks Robinson autographs at one point, and it's like, oh, and the desire to turn that box into a DeLong Gehrig was the
Mm.
genesis of that idea. And I said, look, I'm not getting rid of all my, I'll still keep 10 Brooks Robinsons of different things that they fit in, and I'll have plenty of them. And even though I enjoyed that box, I looked through it shockingly often. It's why it's right there, and I can just grab it and put it on my desk and just start thumbing through cards. I wanted the Gehrig more. And I
Yeah.
realized that was a card that for me to make that happen, it was going to take a really long time. And here I'm preaching patience, but that was just a way to leverage all of that bulk that I have into something that I would want forever. The Grail
Mm-hmm.
collection solved that problem for me. So I'm not actively trying to get rid of that stuff now because I don't have a need to get rid of it. I'm not trying to pay my bills or, do whatever with it. So now I'm just like, okay, I'll just keep them for a little while now. And if somebody sent me an email today because they found that old video and wanted to buy some cards, I would certainly agree to do that. But I also wasn't going to settle because it wasn't a fire sale. I wasn't just going to like blow them out.
Yeah.
These aren't, hey, every auto is $5 or something. I put a price on it that I was willing to let it go for. And if people said no, or they didn't want to do it, I didn't do it,
Yeah.
and I said I'm such a such a hypocrite sometimes, but it sounds like I'm a hypocrite, but it's just you as a collector have to take advantage of what you have. And what I mean by that is when you're buying a card, believe it or not, you have all the leverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're offering money for a card. If the seller of that card, of said card, doesn't want to buy it from you or take your money, that's okay. Go find another one. And as a seller, you also have all it's again, it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but you don't have to sell that card unless you're in the like, I don't have to sell these cards. There's no pressure. A dealer is under a different, they're usually doing it for a living or whatever. But I'm just trying to maximize the value out of this box that I've spent money on and all that. And I can be patient with that. Right. And so I ended up making quite a bit of money on the cards that I sold. So much so that when the Grow collection came along and the Gehrig was in there, it was just like, well, okay. And then I used all that money to buy other cards that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It made my national budget that much bigger. So
Yeah.
it's not that selling is bad. It's not that what Chris's does is bad. I don't think if Chris had the money to buy that other card, he wouldn't have traded the mantle. Agree?
Agreed. Yes.
Right. So if you have the money and can be patient and just let your hobby budget accumulate to whatever goal for that card that you're wanting, that's the ultimate goal, is where you're just spending discretionary income that your family, look, you got to pay your bills first, you got to save for retirement, your kids' college, all of those things matter way more than buying a baseball card. If that's taken care of and you got some discretionary income, or you're intentionally putting away money in your card budget, you can decide use cards or use money. Those are
Right.
your two commodities that you can use to build your collection. I've chosen the route of ideally to use money, and have seen the light that it's okay to use cards. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather not. If I had
Yeah.
the money to buy the Gehrig originally, I wouldn't have, sold all those cards, and if I just keep them. But
Yeah.
it was, hey, I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to see if I can make this work because I wanted the Gehrig, and it did.
I got a quick follow-up question for that, and then I want to ask you a question, Chris. Mike, you said that the goal was the DeLong Gehrig, and can I turn these cards, this box of cards, into the DeLong Gehrig? And then very shortly thereafter, the DeLong Gehrig situation took care of itself in the collection that you bought. other than the 41 DiMaggio, what's the next DeLong Gehrig that you're longing for?
So probably, oh wow, that's such a tough question, and
Because
not
Chris
really a
just
tough
said
question.
the 49 Leaf Page is a big one for him. I'm
I want the
curious what.
49 Leaf Jackie.
Okay.
Is probably the next. That's a bigger card than the DiMaggio. The DiMaggio is a, relatively speaking, not that expensive relative to a Jackie 49 Leaf. But
Yeah.
I really, having the Grail collection, and I had to sell multiple Ruths that I wanted to keep. I had,
Yeah.
in order to make the deal. Now, in hindsight, I probably could have kept those cards, truthfully, but I have a spouse who is very supportive, and I wanted to be respectful for her goals with allowing me to buy the Grail collection with our money, you
Yeah.
know, and she trusted me, and implicit, like, it wasn't a question of was it a good deal or not, but I wanted to show her that I could replenish a lot of those, bulk of those funds very, very quickly, which I did within a
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
weeks.
You were really clear early on. You said the goal number one is get whole.
Yeah,
You kept saying, I want to get whole. And then once I get whole, then we'll see what's going to happen with everything else and what I can keep. And I
yeah,
think that whenever you make an investment, if you buy an investment property, the first thing you want to do is get whole. And then any profit above that is, gravy.
yeah. And I took the extra money that we made in cash profit on that, and I put a huge chunk down on my ranch mortgage. So
Yeah.
I used that money not for car. I kept $60,000 worth of cards. That's that's a lot. I mean, it propelled my collection that would have taken me years and years to get there on my own, and I got to put, I was made whole, first of all, and then allowed me to put, tens of thousands of dollars additional on my mortgage on my
Hmm.
ranch.
Hmm.
So that's a win, 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 win every way you can think about it. And those don't happen. I wish they'd happen every day. That'd be fantastic. But the reality is they don't. And I didn't waste that opportunity in my own mind of how I was able to leverage all of it into so many good things. And I didn't get to keep everything. I just
Yeah.
didn't,
Yeah.
you know.
Now, we're at about 50 minutes, and I'd really like to try to keep you guys under an hour because I respect your time. But at the same time, I've got 100 years worth of collecting expertise in front of me, and I'm fighting myself to not ask a couple more questions that I have. So, Chris, Mike said something a second ago. He said the grades on the cards that he was showing were old labels, and they're probably higher than they would be if they were graded now. Do you, Chris, feel like the grading standards have gotten tougher?
Oh, I hear a lot of pundits say that, and I hear of a lot of our, a lot of guys that know a lot about stuff, and I've heard you've done research on it and stuff. To that question, I don't care. I mean, I don't care. I would, enough people tell me that, then I kind of believe it. So yes, I think they've gotten tougher. But when I crack cards, I I don't I don't I don't get a card, and I don't get a card and say, "Oh, I don't like this grade. It's old. I'm going to try to get a better grade." Now, my friend Tom, he he cracked two cards that got back minimum size or something like that, and both of them were authentic, and he sent both cards in and got two lube rocks and a seven. They were both authentic. Sent them in and got a seven. So I visually got to see that or witness that. So
Yeah.
yes, uh, but I don't. I really don't care. I really don't. But yes, most if I was going to have to check a box, I would say yes. They've gotten tougher.
Now, Mike, you did a video on grading and some cards that got rejected by PSA or got qualifiers, and then you sent them over to a different company, and then they got graded, and then the value changes, and then we've got Tom, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I think that Tom maybe sent those over to Sammy, because I feel like I watched a Sammy Thunder video where he was showing those cards and talking about that. I'm almost positive over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, yeah,
And then Mike, you made the statement about the grades being tougher. If the grades are tougher, if we can switch grading companies and it goes from minimum size to good grades, if we're cracking and the grades are different, do grades mean anything anymore, Mike?
Hmm. Really good question. Yes, they do. They really do. And it's still, but understand what it means, what a grade means. It's an opinion, or in some cases, the bigger the card, it might be multiple opinions of different people looking at that card. It's an opinion of a person, a human being, making a decision in a moment. And to think that all of those moments will be the same, and that you send it to 10 guys and you might get 5 or 6 different grades. Isn't that expected? In fact, wouldn't you think it'd be weird if it wasn't true? If we could grade cards in a absolute standard, with absolute standards on everything, then okay, we can't. I don't want to take the human element out of grading. I don't want someone's opinion to not matter. Again, I'll look at a card. All three of us will look at a card and say, "Man, cover the grade. Is that a nice looking card? I'd like to buy that." You uncover your hand and you go, "Oh, that's a 7. Yeah, that's not surprising." Or that's a 5. Wow, that looks really good for a 5. We do practice by the card, not the grade. But to think the grade is irrelevant and doesn't matter is naive. And I think that you have to, base your decision on. I'd always rather buy a nice looking example of a lower grade. And I think everybody would say that's, that just makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I can get a lower price, I can pay less for that card and still have a nicer looking example. The fact that it got a 5, and it probably, if you send it in today, it might get a 7 on someone else's opinion on a different day. Do grades matter? Yes. Would I go through that hassle to try to upgrade the car? No. But to
But
say that grades don't matter is
if
wrong.
Chris's 53 mantle that he said is in a 5, if he sent it back in and it got a 7, the price of it would just go through the roof, going from a 5 to a 7. So it feels like, and I agree with your definition of what a grade is completely. I don't think that we always looked at it as an opinion. For a long time, I felt like most people thought it was a fact. Oh, this is an 8. Like, it's this person decided it's an 8 and assigned it an 8. That's different than this is an 8. And but if that mantle that's in a 5 went to a 7, we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, and that's
That
kind of
matters.
crazy.
But
Yeah.
here's where the hobby's gotten pretty whack. And this is going to be the most controversial thing I say tonight. Is why is the 7 worth thousands of dollars more? It's because someone's willing to pay it. That's the problem, not the grading companies assigning a grade. It's that we have assigned a certain amount of value to each numerical grade in an exponential way that is absolutely stupid. And so it's not the grading company's fault. It's
Yeah.
our fault as collectors, as hobbyists, as a hobby in general, that we have assigned so much more monetary value to one extra grade. I buy all the modern stuff I buy in 9s, right? All my, by and large, right? Although I picked up a PSA 10 Jose Ramirez for like $15 or whatever it was, and if I can do that, great. But I'm not going to pay the 10 tax on a modern card. I don't think it's worth 10x for a mint card to not say Jim Mint. No, thank you. Someone else is. That's on them, and the seller should try to get as much as they can out of the card. So it's that we've assigned this I don't know, this extra monetary value on these small incremental changes in a number on a slab on a flip
Yeah. Yeah.
that is asinine. And
Yeah. I don't think that that's controversial at all. Chris, do you think that's controversial?
Not at all. But let me say this: that little grade on that slab of a card that I like matters 3 different times to me. One, when I can buy the card maybe for less money. Two, when I die and my wife has to, it makes it easier for her to sell the card. And the most important time that number means something on me is when I play freaking Showcase Showdown.
I love it. We went full circle here today. It's exactly right, which is awesome. You could not have just, I mean, if we had scripted that, it couldn't have gone any better. There
that
have
was
been
on the
so many
script
times.
that you sent me, Greg. I saw that line for Chris on the script.
I literally I'll be honest with you for a second. There have been a few times where you guys are doing Showcase Showdown and it's coming down to the end and you guys hold up the cards and I go, that guy's grade is lower, but that looks like a card. I'd rather have that one than that one, but he just lost because of the grade, but again, I mean, it's part of the whole thing. I guess my takeaway from this and where we've, rabbit hole after rabbit hole gotten to is trust your eye and buy the one that you think looks good. And Chris, I honestly have so much respect for you saying, I'm going to take this 5 and I'm going to trade it down to a 2 that I like the looks of so I can buy this and this too. Like, I think that is fantastic. And I think that people having an ego about the number on the slab, I think that it would be great if the community, like you just said, Mike, could not value that number as much as they currently still are. I think it's kind of coming down a little bit. I feel like the eye appeal of a card is pushing the price up over the grade sometimes, and a low eye appeal one is kind of coming down. I feel like that's starting to happen, but I think that we need to really empower people to trust their eye and buy the one that they like instead of the one that has the highest grade. I showed Mike a 33 Gaudy Rogers Hornsby that I bought in Strongsville. And I sat in the case and I'm looking in this case and it was Tim Payne. I always get Mike Payne and Tim Payne get me crazy. The dealer Tim Payne, right?
Yes.
He's had 3. He had a 3, a 3.5, and a 5. And I'm looking at all 3 of them, and the best one was the 3. And the prices obviously were the 3 was the least, then the 3.5, and the 5 was a lot more. And I'm like, and I'm sitting there with 2 friends. One of them's Darren, returned to collecting. I go, isn't this the best one? And both of my friends sit there and go, that's the best one. And I bought what I thought was the best one for the cheapest amount. And I think that at the end of and I'm sure there's a technical reason for it. There's a little indentation in there. There's a little, something that I'm not seeing, a little print flaw or something, but it's not worth that much more. And I think you hit it on the head, Mike, that we need to start getting back to not allowing that number to control us and take the power back from the grading companies. And I think that we'll enjoy ourselves more.
I think all 3 of us would have bought the 3. Every one of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would think just like you did, I'll take the 3 and have that extra delta, whatever that is, between the 3 and the 5, and I can go buy another card that I love, that I want. So it may sound like I can't say that grades don't matter. That's just not true. But I can say that when I buy cards, I'm going to buy them the way you just said. I'm going to go. When I see Joe DiMaggio 41 play balls, and I'm looking for that card next show at Strongsville or wherever I go to, that's going to be like, I want the best value, the best looking card for the least amount of money. Does that make that's what I'm always searching for.
Yeah. It's just like when we buy a house, just like when we buy a car, we want to get the best value for our money. And I think cards are the same way. And for me, I don't look at cards under a microscope. right? I look at cards from about, I don't know, 18 inches from my face. So as long as they look good from there, for me, I'm good.
Arm's
Yeah,
length.
that well, your arms aren't getting long enough, Mike. Yours, it's going to be about 3 feet here pretty soon for us as we continue to get older, like Chris.
Here, let me do my favorite Chris impression from Showcase
All right.
Showdown.
Yes.
Wait, hold on.
You got to put the glasses on. Push them in. Push it up.
Wait, what is this grade? Let me see.
I love Chris. I love you so much, buddy.
Let me do Mike's imitation when I do that. Chris, just put it on the screen. I'll tell you what the grade is.
That's right.
That's awesome. Well, guys, I had an absolute blast. It's been too long since I've had a good conversation with you guys. Well, I mean, we talked briefly at the National and stuff, but being able to just sit and have a good conversation about the hobby that we love together, this has been a lot of fun. And whether anybody listens, I say this anytime I do a collaboration, usually after I've hit end record, whether anybody else listens or not, it really doesn't matter that much to me because I just had a really fun hour. And if other people enjoy it too, good for them. But I appreciate your guys' time. If you guys are out there listening and you're not a person who watches Showcase Showdown, check it out. I think it's very educational. I think that it's a lot of fun. And you get to see these two guys have a really good time. And just witnessing that is pretty cool. So, Chris, Mike, you have anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I did recently on my channel at Baseball Collector, I made a playlist of all of the Showcase Showdown episodes. So if somebody wanted to just, with all the other stuff that I do, if they just wanted to watch Showcase Showdown and kind of, I have guys that are going back and I get comments on, episode number 4 or whatever from a year ago or whatever. So just, I have that playlist set up on my channel. You can go check that out and look for your favorite players or whatever and see if we've done them.
And I know it gets confusing for people because Mike is on multiple channels. You got Bench Clear and you've got Baseball Collector, but they're all housed in the Baseball Collector channel.
That's correct.
Chris, you got anything else?
I just want to thank you for letting us come on here and congratulate you coming up for a 2-year anniversary that you're going to get. I got one coming up, and I want to thank you, Mike, for getting me started for my 2-year. You gave me the start, so appreciate everything both of you guys do for the hobby.
You bet.
And Chris from Missouri is obviously the name of his channel. If you're not a subscriber of either one, I highly recommend it. When this airs, this is probably going to air Friday or Saturday. So you will have had the 2-year anniversary, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is October 17th, right, Chris?
You nailed it. All
right.
I changed my name to be more appropriate.
Mike from Texas. I'm Greg from Sacramento. I guess California. I'll just say I'm from somewhere else. All right, guys. Thanks again. And everybody out there, thanks for listening.